was making a joke. Hi, welcome. Can you guys hear me? Okay, audio's working. Hello. Hello. Greetings. Hi. Welcome to TechSoup. For those of you who don't know, TechSoup, as you can see from the wall behind you, is a nonprofit that helps other nonprofits. Somebody lost their Diet Coke. That helps other nonprofits with their technology needs. We've been around for 25 years. We basically, what we do is we run a number of different programs. Our primary program is a product distribution program where large companies like Microsoft, Cisco, Symantec, Adobe, Intuit donate their products to us, and we pass along those donations to nonprofits. So it's not like Amazon. You don't just buy a product. You have to be validated as a 501c3 nonprofit, and if you are, you apply like a grant, and you can get products at 95% off of retail, just pay shipping and handling. And that program funds the rest of what TechSoup does. We are a nonprofit, so that is our kind of sustainability model, and it funds a number of other programs that have to do with helping nonprofits with technology. The newest division of TechSoup is the cool department that I work for, which is called Caravan Studios. Caravan Studios is, the focus of Caravan Studios is making the web smaller. So what I mean by that is helping nonprofits find relevant, localized information that is specific to them via technology interventions like apps. So how are we doing that? We're going to hackathons. We're taking what comes out of hackathons and adopting the code if it's donated, keeping the apps, finishing the apps, because a lot of times those are just prototypes and designs. So making those into complete apps, putting them into the marketplace, the TechSoup marketplace, offering those to nonprofits, helping nonprofits understand what kind of technology they would need, what kind of app they would need. We're running our own hackathons. We're working with larger companies to help them run hackathons to make their products more relevant to nonprofits. So making more relevant technology solutions, specifically in app form. We have 2 in the marketplace already. One is for domestic violence shelters. It's already out, and it's called Safe Night, and it helps victims of domestic violence find beds to sleep, because often shelters are full, and the shelter just says find a hotel. So it's an app that will help shelters connect with hotels to find rooms and crowdfund rooms for victims of domestic violence. Super cool. The other one we are doing has to do with volunteer claiming app, which really what that means is we talked to pet rescue orgs, we talked to food rescue orgs. We found they had one need in common, which was immediate, urgent transport. Whether it's taking this dog from the pound before it gets put down by the end of today, or it's getting this food that's been discarded by this restaurant or store that will get thrown away by the end of today. They both had, so we have this app that we are now building to help volunteers claim a volunteer gig that is urgent, and it's push notification, it's geolocative, super cool stuff that we're doing. I'm telling you all of that because Caravan Studios is my team, and because Caravan Studios is now the sponsor of this meetup. And you can follow us at Caravan Studios on Twitter. And go to caravanstudios.org. Also follow and go to TechSoup and TechSoup.org, naturally. I want to tell you all about our wonderful volunteer corps. I'd like the volunteers who are here, everyone who's on this list, Susan Chavez, Matt, Crystal, Zach, Mark Siegel, Scott Moore, Randy Farmer, everyone stand up. Give the volunteers a, she's shy, but they rock, seriously. Ravi's at the front door. I can't do this without them. They're amazing. If you are tweeting, and I assume that you are tweeting, come on, then you should be using the hashtag OCTribe. If you have not figured out how to get online, there are little sheets at the sign-in sheet at the door that will show you how, and it's super complicated and like ridiculously complex, and oh well. What else? Take a copy of the Buzzing Community's book. Please, I beg of you, take that book. I have so many of them, and we want you to read them. So please take that book. It was donated by Richard Millington, the author, who sent them. He's in England. So yeah, if you want to tweet at him once you take one. But please don't leave without taking a book. What else do I need to tell you guys? Told you about what we do. I am Susan Tenby at SuzBoop, SuzBoop on Twitter. Oh, and we have a new space in the agenda for people who have jobs. Hi, Heidi. People who have jobs to hire people who have job vacancies and people who are looking. So I wanted to start with anybody who is looking. Raise your hand. Community managers, you see them? Raise your hand high. Consultants and community managers. All these people are super smart community managers who you should talk to after the meetup's over and exchange business cards. People who have job openings, do you want to come up here? You have like a 1 minute announcement. Anywhere you want me to pass to you, Mike? Who has job vacancies right now? You guys, right? I'm looking at you. Do you guys want to? Where's the recruiter? You are the recruiter. Do you want to tell?
Are you talking about all sorts of jobs or just community managers? Okay. In about 6 months, we will.
Oh, I thought you hired someone. I thought you had a community job opening. No? Okay. Office manager. Okay.
I have a rec that's going to be open probably in about another month for a community manager that's based in Florida. So if anybody knows anyone good in Florida, that would be great. Thank you.
We had someone else who, someone else had written me and wanted to give a job announcement. Is that person in the room? What was his name, Susan? Gary? Is Gary here? Nope. Sorry, Gary, I told you. Do you, and you?
You're going to get to hear more from me, but at Lyft, we're hiring for community managers on my community engagement team quickly and based in San Francisco across the street, but to represent communities across the country. So talk to me afterwards if you're interested.
And Gary feverishly asked me 5 times if he could make an announcement. And we're late and he's not here. Ugh. Okay. I don't have any community positions opening, but you guys can all exchange business cards. The only other thing I wanted to say was, unfortunately, TechSoup is losing this building. So next month is the last month that we will have the meetup in this building. I am looking for alternate spaces. Worst case scenario, we'll go to our other building, 435 Brannan, but it's just not that good for a meetup. So if you guys know of a really great space close to Caltrain, close to public transportation, please let me know. I'm very easy to find. I'm the face in the meetup.com/OCTribe page. Cannot miss me. I'm all over the place. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass it to our beautiful presenter, Emily Castor from Lyft. I think that's about it. If you have phone needs, take them in the hall. Don't talk on the phone or do anything loud on the phone in here, obviously. I think that's it. And then after Emily presents, we'll have Q&A, and then you guys can break up and schmooze and drink and eat, and then I will kick you out at 9. And don't be alarmed if the lights go off, because after a certain hour in this building, they auto go off, and then I run over and turn them back on. That's it. Okay, thank you. Here's Emily.
Hey guys, thanks Susan. You are a force of nature. It's so awesome to be here. And I can see from like watching the hashtag a little bit that you guys are a really active community, and I'm excited to come and meet you and hopefully talk to more of you afterwards to learn from you too, because I know a lot of people here have been working in community for a while. And I'm a little bit of a Johnny-come-lately, to be honest, but fortunately, we've learned a lot of great lessons over the last year with Lyft, doing something that is a pretty novel kind of a community platform. And looking at community a bit more broadly than a lot of companies do. And so I'd love to just share with you a little bit about how we've built community at Lyft. And then Susan asked me to talk more generally about peer-to-peer sharing economy communities, because this is something that I think has become a really vibrant part of not only the tech scene, but sort of the whole economy, something that's fundamentally changing the economy across the country as people blow apart old ideas of work and old ideas of how to get goods and services and start to connect with each other around peer-to-peer sharing marketplaces that many of you have probably used: Airbnb, TaskRabbit, Lyft, and so many across other verticals that allow people to get what they need from other people in their local communities. So with that kind of online, offline peer-to-peer marketplace, there are a lot of community dynamics at play, and so I've designed my talk just to speak to that. So, you know, maybe you're not running a peer-to-peer community, and so hopefully, I hope it's still interesting. This, I think, is something that could be useful for anyone, you know, running a community that is based around, and where the product also is really based around the people that you serve. So, that's me. That's me in my crazy Lyfty colors in the alley behind our office across the street. And we like to have a lot of fun. The culture internally at Lyft really reflects the values of our community. And I think that's important to sort of holistically like embody what you say you're about. So traditionally, and you know, many of us who may have worked as community managers in other types of companies, you know, we've probably seen this idea that, you know, there are like community managers who deal with community stuff, and then there's everyone else. The community is like a function, a department within that company, and then there's the engineering department, you know, and then there's operations and everybody else. But we think about community a little bit differently. So everything that we do at Lyft is in service of our community values. And you know, we're there to empower a community of people who are together making an impact in, you know, in their cities, in the broader world. And the product that we provide actually is community in many ways, the value that we're offering to the people who use Lyft. And I think that much like as it is with Lyft, there are some distinct characteristics of community in any sharing economy marketplace. That's a little bit different than what it might be in another type of company. So for us, community is absolutely core to what we do. We know that because the people who are on the, you know, sort of providing the experience for anyone who takes a Lyft are just other people. They're other fellow users. We have to cultivate community strongly. Otherwise, the entire thing evaporates. Right? We don't have you know, inventory. We don't own stores. We don't own cars. We don't employ drivers. We have people who voluntarily choose to come together and create this really ephemeral thing that ends up serving an enormous transportation need in the city, but it can evaporate just as quickly if it's not a motivated, passionate group of people who love what they're doing. So I'm going to walk through just a few phases of, or you know, different angles from which I like to look at our community and think can apply to like any peer-to-peer community. Talk about how we thought about constructing those with Lyft. So our brand is about community. And you know, branding in many places, you know, it might be something that stands separately from your community team. Maybe you have, you know, a marketing agency, or you have a marketing team and a PR team that think more about brand, and you kind of think more about you know, about other channels. But I'm guessing that most of you who've spent some amount of time in community are thinking a lot about like the voice of your brand and the way that it portrays the values of your company whenever you're communicating across any of your community channels. And we thought really intentionally about our brand when we decided to launch Lyft. We thought, okay, how do we want to make people feel? You know, what is it that, what are these values that are driving us that need to elicit like a particular emotional reaction in people in order for this community to be successful? We needed to know really deeply a very simple idea of what we were about, and that was, you know, making communities feel smaller, bringing people closer together through authentic connections and shared rides. It makes transportation friendlier, safer, more affordable in cities. That's what Lyft is about. And so we thought, okay, what do we have to do to get somebody to feel comfortable getting in the car of a stranger? This is like something we're taught not to do when we're kids. We're like, just, you know, if somebody comes up to you on the street and they're in like their own strange car and they say, hey, you want to ride? Like that's pretty much a sign, you know, that this is a weirdo that you should run away from, and like it's, you know, it's like strangers with candy. We're conditioned against that. So we had to break apart the, you know, the conditioning that we've received as kids and construct a brand that would make people feel comfortable taking that counterintuitive step. So we did that by trying to make it immediately friendly. And one phrase I haven't said yet is pink mustache, but I know you all have seen those cars around town. That's us, right? That's a ridiculous thing that we ask drivers to put on the front of their cars. and it's emotionally disarming, right? This is an icon of our brand that's adopted by all the participants in the community that helps put people in this state of mind. And other elements of our brand have also been chosen that way, like, the light transcendent icon of a balloon, or their colors of pink and teal are kind of, they're fun, they're lighthearted, they're friendly. They're all engineered around this idea that Lyft is a person you want to relate to, that you feel is approachable and non-threatening and really comfortable to form a relationship with. So, we thought about that brand persona actually as a person. So we sat down and we thought, okay, if Lyft were a person, who would she be? Because she is a woman, sorry. Her name's Caitlin. She likes to ride a Vespa, and she volunteers at the local animal shelter, and she likes yoga, and she lives in the Lower Haight, and she's not ashamed to shop at, JCPenney when they have a sale, but she's also kind of hip and likes to, go to boutiques and things like that, but she's not too flashy. And that's who Lyft is. And so when you have a really clear idea in your mind as a community manager of who your brand is, it makes it really easy to visualize that whenever you craft a message, write a communication, choose a picture. It's like, is this something that Caitlin would say? Is this how she would say it? And then that person, with a peer-to-peer marketplace, it's really important for your brand to sound like a person and just like someone that someone else is gonna relate to, because your whole user experience is about people relating to people and having an authentic personal connection. So your brand should reflect that too. And we try really hard to avoid sort of self-promotional, salesy rhetoric and just sound like we were writing a note to our friend whenever we send you an email. And not sort of inflate our own egos too much when we write about, Lyft did this or that, or our Lyft accomplished this. It's you did this together. We as a community were able to build something that is powerful. It's about the other people who are part of this with you. Okay, so one feature that I mentioned briefly that is really, really key about peer-to-peer marketplaces is you as a company are not the one providing the experience. You are like a step of removal away from control over what the end user is actually experiencing, because in the case of a ride, the driver is the one who is going to interact directly with the passenger. And so, this means that the driver, in order for them to be a wonderful reflection of your brand, needs to be extremely bought in to what you're building together, right? Because, if they just kind of think you're full of shit, they're probably, not going to produce that emotional reaction that you want a passenger to have when they take a Lyft. But if you really, we have a mission about doing something meaningful, we need to cultivate happy drivers, because otherwise our passengers aren't going to have a great experience either. And drivers are going to bail because they don't love what they're doing. And so it's not like when you just have a company that has a bunch of employees that depend on you, and you can you have some coercive power over them to get them to do what you want. Instead, you have to really keep them excited about it, because they can leave and choose to do whatever they want at any other moment. There's much less keeping them as a driver. And so we want to delight drivers just as much as we want to delight passengers. Drivers are, in sort of traditional market terms, the supply in this marketplace. But they are people. They're people that can't just be treated like interchangeable parts. And they're motivated by things, and they have other things that they do in their lives that are powerful. And so generally someone who's a participant in a peer-to-peer marketplace, whether they're renting their home out on Airbnb or serving as a TaskRabbit, they're using this kind of new flexible form of work to power their dreams, to give themselves freedom to have a non-traditional form of work. Or maybe if they have a traditional job during the day, they want to also, go out and have the adventure of meeting new people and get, extra money to be able to save up for their, dream wedding. But they don't just identify as being a driver. They don't think they're not professional drivers. They're people who want to be celebrated for the other special things about them. And so what we've done to try to delight drivers is, to ask them to express themselves for who they are, and to create a culture in which we actually really celebrate and reward unique drivers who do wonderful, awesome things, and create a passenger culture that appreciates the value that the drivers bring to the interaction just as much as we value the passengers as people. So, when you get into a Lyft car, like, you should be excited about who is about to pick you up and who you're about to meet, because they're probably someone really awesome who's a musician, or, you know, makes, or, you know, artisanal mustard on the side. I see my good friend Sean, who's a Lyft driver in the back, who does all kinds of incredible things in addition to driving with Lyft. And so you want them to feel celebrated for those other things about themselves. Then to help create this experience that it has a common thread between experiences that are delivered by very different drivers, very different people, it's helpful to create a ritual. And it sounds a little bit freaky, right? Like, is this a cult? Like, what are we doing? Like, we're sort of sitting down and like creating some kind of like little altar. No, it's about finding a few fundamental touch points that can be so like universally adopted in people's minds as like features of the Lyft experience that they can reenact them every time they go into a Lyft. And they're designed to like put you in the frame of mind that'll make you receptive to, you know, a friendly interaction that you know, sort of supports that social mission of connection between driver and passenger. So from the pink mustache approaching when they come to get you on the street, and you see that, and you're sort of put at ease by this friendly, goofy emblem that you know, that's coming up to you, sort of making it clear that this stranger's car is a Lyft car that's probably the ride that you've ordered to come get you. To when you approach the car, you're invited to sit in the front seat. So that puts you on a peer level with the driver. Sitting in the back is, you know, this sort of traditional experience that people are used to having with cabs or black cars, and that creates a hierarchy. It immediately puts the driver in sort of a subservient position to the passenger, and that is damaging to the peer-to-peer dynamic and does not, you know, put you physically in a position to have a really, you know, comfortable back and forth conversation. And so by when drivers are welcomed into the community, we let them know that they should welcome all their passengers to sit in the front seat. And when I think, you know, we need to do a better job of sort of passenger onboarding as well. But I'd love for every passenger who joins the community to know that they should feel welcome to sit in the front seat, and that lays the groundwork for that social dynamic that we want. And the fist bump. I don't know if you've heard about the fist bump or experienced it, but it's kind of like the secret handshake of Lyft. So you might not know about it until you have your first Lyft, but when you get in, your driver will probably go for the pound. And that is another sort of like peer-to-peer symbol, because shaking a hand is really formal. It's not like a casual, friendly interaction. And so we want you to immediately kind of feel at ease like you would with a friend, and a fist bump is a little bit more like that. So that's the ritual that we have designed to try to put people in a friendly frame of mind, and make it easy to remember from experience to experience. Then there are stars in a community, right? Like there are drivers and passengers. But in our case, I would say that because drivers are so invested and spend so much time, really, like, there are some very distinctive stars in our driver community, and they inspire each other. And you can create these sort of phenomenal examples that become like legendary about your community if you see the seed and then you just pour celebration on it, right? So we have a driver named Matt Ernest, who is just like a one-of-a-kind phenomenon. He has done all kinds of ridiculous things in his life, including like being a stage manager at Coachella and Electronic Daisy Carnival, and he is a DJ. So he turned his Lyft into the unique expression of him, which is, he made it the disco Lyft, and he put an LED lights all around his pink mustache, and he put a disco ball in the car, and he has DJ decks in the back so that if you, after your ride, you want to get out and have a little turntable lesson, you can do that. And he has in-car karaoke, and I think a Wi-Fi hotspot at this point. I don't know. It's like getting so tricked out. It's pretty crazy. But he now is just like above and beyond. And once people saw what he was doing, and we were able to give him some recognition for that by celebrating him in our driver forums, in Facebook groups that we have for drivers, and he was able to post pictures there and stories there of what he was doing, and we called him out in our newsletters and engaged with him on social media, and he created a Twitter handle which now has hundreds of followers, and he made a Facebook page, and I think he's like sort of developing other disco Lyft spin-offs in other cities. You can imagine this inspired some others to think about, how can I make this unique expression of myself in my Lyft? And that set off like a ball rolling that has turned into actually like dozens and dozens of themed Lyfts throughout many Lyft cities. And one of those is Cookie Wars Lyft, a fairly recent arrival. He's a guy who bakes homemade cookies, 2 kinds every day, gives them out to passengers in his Lyft, and has them vote on which kind is best, and then the best one comes back the next day. So this stuff is like ridiculous. Like, this is talking about like something that used to be replaced by a cab ride, and instead you're like getting cookies and DJ lessons and, you know, hearing people's life stories. How does this happen, right? It's like identifying those unique personalities, celebrating them for how they break out of the mold, and then you know, bringing the light to that, so that and rewarding it so that other people emulate it. And for drivers, you know, this is going to be a more meaningful experience for them, and one that they stay more closely engaged with, if it has meaning for them that's more than just generating income, right? We know that this is materially meaningful for, I'm sorry, do you have a question? Yeah, and we can get into that. Cool. All right, so we'll get into that later. So in order for drivers to really be happy and excited about Lyft on an ongoing basis, it's got to mean something more to them than just money. Right? We'd really love for drivers to be part of this community for a long time, even as their, you know, needs for extra income fluctuate. And so that's making a source of meaning for drivers and giving them a social community and a group of friends and activities around that that kind of go way outside just any kind of like meetups that we would need to have for functional purposes. But we have these driver Facebook groups that we created at the beginning because we thought, okay, well, drivers are going to want some way to be in touch with each other and share experiences. And they are just phenomenally active. It's crazy. I mean, it's almost a problem, like how active they are. Sean can attest. It's like, you know, it's a huge outpouring of engagement, which is really a gift as a community manager. Like, you're always trying to think about how you can get your community more engaged. And we knew that, you know, drivers were out there having this isolated experience in their cars. Like, they're coming in contact with passengers, but they're not coming in contact with drivers. And yet it's this really visceral experience, and so we want them to be able to talk to each other, and they just love it. They want to connect. They want to plan spontaneous meetups where they all get together late at night after they drive and you know, talk about stories and get, like, you know, some diner food before they go to bed at 3 in the morning. And enabling those kinds of connections has made Lyft a more meaningful part of drivers' lives, and means that we're closer to the center of what they care about. And that's really good for our community. So what we're offering that's really a different kind of value for, you know, for a passenger is that this is a personal experience, right? That this is not a vanilla experience. And I think one thing that we see across consumer culture right now is that people want more authenticity in the goods and services that they consume. That's one of the reasons that Airbnb has been so phenomenally successful, is that when you travel somewhere, you probably don't want to be in a little white cardboard box that looks exactly the same as the little white cardboard box in your hometown. You want to stay somewhere where you feel like you're experiencing hospitality. Even if you're not staying in, you know, a friend's home, you want to feel like you're staying in a friend's home, because that's the most wonderful experience of travel. And so with Lyft, we want to offer something that is, you know, is also a superior experience, an experience that is differentiated by the humanity of it and by, you know, the meaning that can be derived from it, not just from like the convenient functionality or the, you know, more affordable price that people might find from getting a ride through Lyft. So I would suggest that peer-to-peer marketplaces shouldn't try to, you know, make themselves like just cheaper, easier versions of whatever the traditional service was. Like, Airbnb is not going to sort of out-hotel a hotel, right? But where they are more valuable is in these personal, authentic elements. And so find those and double down on your strengths. Double down on what makes you unique and wonderful. And that's, if that's Matt Ernest of the world, okay, we've got those. Those are like these little outside the box variations. Let's pour gasoline on those and help them to sing so that that people flock to this community because it provides something different, more fun, a way to feel more connected to your neighbors. And so in order to make that happen, I think, to let people focus on the personal aspect of an experience, you really have to design the financial transaction and like the mechanics of it out of it. You need really good UX designers to think about, how can I make this so dead simple that there's no anxiety in the person's mind when they have to request a ride. And they already know all the pertinent details that they need to know, and they can get in contact to sort of like solve all the logistics, and they don't even have to think about paying at all, because they've loaded their credit card the first time they ever downloaded Lyft, and then they don't have to do anything with it when they're in the car. And then later, after they get out of the car, they can think about it. But it's not a discussion that has to happen between the two people, which I think would erode the social dynamic, because that kind of financial conversation is one that is a really different type of conversation than just bonding as two people who get to spend 10 minutes together on the way across town. So we, in addition to sort of designing the headaches out of it, have found ways to celebrate the social element and reward, and through promotions like campaigns we run around Lyft Love, have rewarded people who do acts of kindness for each other and other kinds of socially focused behaviors. Like for Valentine's Day, we did this Lyft Love campaign where we asked people to share photos of something kind they had done for their driver or for their passenger, to just surprise them and delight them and make their day a little bit better. And that reinforces our core community values. I hear suggestions for promotions all the time where someone's like, oh, well, there's like St. Patrick's Day this week. Let's do a St. Patrick's Day promotion. And as community managers, it can be really tempting to just kind of fix on whatever's coming up on the calendar and think, okay, I'm going to use that as an opportunity to engage my community. But is it relevant? Is there like really nexus there between whatever this idea is and the core values of your community? For me, I try to stick with things that are are really core and that produce behaviors that are going to reinforce our culture. And those can be timely things. They can be, like Outside Lands celebrates music. We celebrate creativity in our community and the wonderful, like, creative people that are often Lyft drivers. And so I think we would love to do something around that. But I'll ignore other opportunities that I don't think have that nexus. And we can also try to extend the relationship between drivers and passengers, make it easy for them to connect if we see that there's a mutual interest in, people who love music and want to be in a band together. Sean has his own Twitter handle, and you might share it with a passenger in the car, and if they tweeted him after the ride, or if they even just tweet about him, and I know from when I see that they're probably tweeting about him even though they don't mention him, I as a community manager can make that connection and help that relationship to live on. So, we could take a lot of stock photography. We could, write a lot of sort of, our own stories, put our own imagery out there. But as a peer-to-peer community, I think what's really, really important is to depend heavily on user-generated content. Because if authenticity is who you are, lead with authentic visions into, windows into the experience of your product that have been produced by users. And delight those users in the process because they'll feel wonderful that you highlighted something that they created. Stories are incredibly important in a peer-to-peer community, and especially for this in-person experience. It's something that if you just download in the App Store, it's going to look like a map with a blue dot on it and a pin. Like, this is not a multi-dimensional, human-looking experience when you first look at the software product. That's why we try to take all of this imagery that actually does reflect from the experience that's been collected by through our community channels and surface that so that people can say, wow, that I really I can imagine myself doing that. That person looks really cool. I'd love to meet them, and feel drawn to the experience because of that. And it's also very shareable content. And the more that you promote user-generated content by sort of reinforcing that behavior by sharing it, the more people will produce it. and then every time they produce it, it's probably going out to their entire network. So that has great viral potential. The voice that you want to have in doing this is not one of a marketer, I think. We want to, obviously to have a company that grows and has a strong life, and to enable our community to, to impact people all over the world. Of course, we have that as an objective. But the way to do that is to be meaningful to people and to give them value. And I really don't think about sort of like the conversion that I'm getting out of any specific like message I put in a driver newsletter that's intended to reward them and make them feel good. I'm thinking about the emotional impact that it has on them, and then I believe that has a long-term return for us. And when you cultivate the community in that way, you get these awesome people doing things that you never would have even thought of yourself, like Davis Lee, who's very crafty, and he's a driver in San Francisco, and he made these hats himself. He's made a whole bunch of different like amazing pieces of Lyft swag all on his own, in addition to the artisan macaroons that he sometimes gives out to his passengers. Because that's just something he loves to do, and we celebrate him for it. And so he's built now a reputation in the driver community, and can become kind of a celebrity within our driver community for doing that kind of thing, and that gives him a personal sense of fulfillment and recognition. And so he keeps doing it, and that that makes our community even more attractive to passengers, to see people like that. For any of this to be possible, there's a whole sort of back end of trust and safety that has to be there in a peer-to-peer marketplace, because you have less control over the interaction when you're relying on peers to provide a service. And because of that characteristic I mentioned before, of the fact that sort of all your peer-to-peer supply and demand can just evaporate in a moment if people don't trust in what you're building. It's very important that you be just impeccable in your support of your community, and make sure that they're safe and that they can trust the people that you've allowed to be there. Especially with Lyft, I would say even more so than Airbnb in some instances, because we don't give you the element of choice over your driver. We're asking you to rely on us to assign you to a driver through our system, the one who's closest to you, that you can trust to give you a safe and friendly ride. And so that means we have to do intensive driver screening. We do DMV checks. We do criminal background checks. We have liability insurance that goes above and beyond what the state requires of even licensed limo drivers. And all of that is there so that you can just relax and have fun and focus on the social aspect of the transaction when you're in the car. And anything, I think that something that many of us are familiar with is the idea of accountability within communities, but in peer-to-peer communities, ratings are also very important. And so that you need to know that if something bad goes down when you're in the ride, if someone's just a jerk to you, they're not someone that you'd want to interact with in the future, or if they really do something that you think is a violation of our community standards, you're only going to use Lyft if you feel like there's going to be accountability for that behavior. And so we have that system and monitoring and a support team that will make sure that if anything ever comes up, that we're there impeccably to resolve it for you and make sure that you aren't negatively affected. And that's crucial as a foundation to make sure that the community moves forward. And whenever you make a decision in a peer-to-peer marketplace, there are going to be a lot of people who have a stake in the decision that you make. It's not, just like a company where you can kind of decide, well, we don't want to expand over here anymore. We want to change our formula a little bit this way, and then, we can just sort of make that top-down decision and not worry about, what our employees are going to think because we have control over them. We have drivers who are very materially invested in the way that our system works now. Many of them depend on us for a significant amount of income every month. And so to consult them, to make them feel part of the process, to listen to them, and to have transparency around all the decisions that we make is extremely important to retaining their good faith and making sure that our community can move forward and support them in a way that will make them want to continue to be a part of it. Finally, I would like to talk about this broader frame of our mission and what we think the sharing economy is really doing in the world. I mean, we do this because we have a purpose, and we believe that this is creating a fundamental economic change that is expanding access to, to the means of production. Really, it's really changing the means of production and distribution, and in a very democratic way. That's making it easier for, for people when they need something flexibly to get it in a way that means more, and to also have the power to use the assets that they already have, whether that's their time or their car or their home as an Airbnb host, to to help other people in their communities, and in doing so, to make their cities feel less anonymous, more connected, more resilient. And we believe in that. And it's not a small change. I'm sure many of you have heard about like the regulatory issues that Lyft has faced or other sharing economy companies have faced. There are policies in place in many places that were set up for very different systems and that have constituents and regulatory bodies that defend them. And so we're asking quite a substantial adjustment from the status quo. And fortunately, we have a power of a huge group of people, an increasingly large group of people who are very passionate about what we're doing. And peer-to-peer marketplaces have that in common, right? By being a marketplace that's powered by people that are invested in what you're doing, especially one where you've worked very hard to cultivate their level of commitment and how meaningful this is to them, they can be a force for change for you. And so as a community manager in that kind of a marketplace, you become a political organizer in many ways. And we saw this recently in LA, when we received a cease and desist order from the taxi cab administrator of the LA Department of Transportation. And we were quite surprised to receive that because we already had a statewide operating agreement with the California Public Utilities Commission from a prior round of regulatory negotiation. But in the face of that, when our community found out about it, there was an outpouring. People who had never taken a Lyft before said, "Don't take away my right to Lyft." And they rallied and they said, "What can we do to help?" And this is where, a community manager, by being well attuned to the people who distinguish themselves as leaders and really then as activists within your community, can help, bring, change laws, enable policymakers to see the value of what you're doing for their cities, and, help empower the people who distinguish themselves to be the leaders in that fight. So we had an LA passenger who had been very engaged with us and had been a power lifter in LA, and she's a mom and a fashion blogger with a sizable audience of her own. And when she found out this was happening, she sent out an email to her 10,000 person email list. She's got a Twitter handle to have 200 or 2,000 followers pretty much overnight. Created a blog to save Lyft in LA, and sort of became the self-appointed spokesperson of this LA Save Lyft movement. And we held a community meeting, sort of a town hall meeting. We let her MC and invited other drivers and passengers to come tell their stories about why they cared about keeping Lyft in LA. And they led that. They made that change happen. And by telling their stories, and they got attention from the press and from LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, and were able to really shift the conversation away from just the entrenched taxi interests that were there making an opposite case. So that's a power of community mobilized for change, not just for the development of a business. So it can be scary when you have a very invested community and then you get a threat saying drivers could be arrested or impounded. It could evaporate, right? That's another one of those moments where everyone could decide to leave. But if you use that moment instead to inspire people and let them know that you're part of a movement, you're a pioneer with us in this, we're building something that's going to really change the way people connect to their communities and get around, and maybe even, help the environment by taking cars off the road, then they're going to stand with you in that because they can tell the authenticity of your mission and they want to be a part of it. So, I think that's a really exciting element of this. And then just to close, I think this is a quote that I really love from Seth Godin. And I do, so it says, consumers are not loyal to cheap commodities. They crave the unique, the remarkable, and the human. Sure, you can always succeed for a while with the cheapest, but you earn your place in the market with humanity and leadership. And that's a value that I try to live by with Lyft. And this is like a 2-minute video, but we could skip it. Or do you want to watch it? All right. Oh, I don't know if I have sound, though. That could be a killer. I don't think we have this hooked up to...
request a driver, it shows you how far away they are.
It shows you a picture of the driver, but also a picture of the car.
A few minutes later, they show up.
You fist bump because that's the Lyft thing to do, and we're on our way.
Lyft gives me a really wonderful sense of freedom. I can take my dog, and we can go explore the city, but then know that there will be someone there who's going to pick us up at a moment's notice and take us back home safe and sound. The other night, I could not get a cab, and I had Rupert. I tried getting a Lyft, and I called him, and I just said, I know it's raining, but I have my dog. He was so nice. It's really the best option for me living in the city without a car.
There's something about getting a Lyft that puts you at ease, because this is a person that's kind of just like you.
They see that somebody in their area needs a ride, and they think, hey, I can do that for them.
I drive into the city every day to commute. I can pick up people as I'm driving into work.
Sometimes I see people at the bus stop when it's raining. Yeah. I feel so bad for them because I've been that person watching the cars go by with one person in it wet.
You're not just driving them around. You're a friend first.
Do you want to put some music on?
Sure, I got some stuff.
I love being someone that they can depend on. I'm basically a buddy with a car.
I take my pink mustache really seriously.
There's a thing called the power mode. You know about that? That's like the Batmobile thing. Feel it? I bet you can feel it.
Not everybody has a good day, but if I can offer any kind of smile, that makes me feel really good.
It's a great way for people to get to know each other in a way where you can help each other as well.
Using my car for good, it's made me be a better person.
It's definitely much more of a community feeling than a service. Being able to share a ride and have someone to talk to while I'm doing that means the world.
Thanks, guys.
So we're going to open it up. Open it up to Q&A. So I will pass the mic around because the people watching the stream can't hear unless you're mic'd. So yeah.
Okay. I loved your presentation, by the way. It was really awesome. I have a question. So what are some specific ways that Lyft has celebrated their top community members or awesome drivers? I'd just love to know more about that. Like what specific things you've done.
Yeah, and this is Sahana from Cloud.
Oh, yes, I'm Sahana from Cloud. Yeah.
I'll give it to her so she can answer.
Yeah, so it's actually fun to talk about that with a community of folks who are not drivers, because I think that part's a little bit invisible to the passengers sometimes, because we do so many community building efforts with drivers, behind the scenes that not everybody else gets to see. So I talked a little bit about our Facebook groups, and although there are some limitations to Facebook groups as a platform, you don't have control over the features, they generate so much engagement, right, because of where they are. Everybody's checking it all day anyway. So those have become a place, obviously, for people who have a high profile in the community to distinguish themselves. And we use them also to give shout-outs. So we like to inject positivity from other channels and sort of close the loop when we receive wonderful kudos about a driver, whether it comes in on Twitter or it comes in on one of our support channels, where someone's taken the time to say, oh my gosh, I just had the most amazing driver, this person made my day by doing this. We'll realize what an impact it can have on the driver to hear that, and it'll positively reinforce their awesome behavior. And so we'll go and inject that into the group and call them out, tag them in the group and be like, kudos to Sean because, you just got an awesome shout out from this passenger. That's probably the 5th one this week, and keep doing what you do. The passengers love you. And those kinds of things are, really helpful for distinguishing leaders. But another way that we do it is in our driver newsletters. We send out driver newsletters every 2 weeks, and those are custom crafted for each city. They feature user-generated content from the city, and generally pictures contributed by drivers so they feel reflected in that. They feel some ownership over what they see. And then we have an award that I made called the Golden Fist Bump Award. Sean's a former recipient of the Golden Fist Bump Award. And so the Golden Fist Bump Award, it used to be the cherry on top, actually, but then we acquired Cherry, and so then it was weird because they didn't exist anymore, and we couldn't give out free Cherry car washes. But so we made it the Golden Fist Bump Award, which I actually like even better. And so we tell a story of what that person did to deserve the Golden Fist Bump. And so, you know, I would like to think that it's become like somewhat coveted, and the winners of it are regarded very highly by their peers. And by seeing the examples of what they've done to win it, it can be inspiring to other drivers. And then we also just feature, you know, a lot of photos on our Facebook page, and our drivers are generally very attuned to our public Facebook page as well, and can see when they've been given recognition, like with a photo that a passenger took of them and shared on Twitter or Instagram, that we then, you know, give more attention to that way. You know, that's always helps reinforce the behavior when they can get that kind of exposure. Oh, and we did the Lyfty Awards at our recent 1-year anniversary party. We had a big block party and took over Soma Street Food Park. Had like 3,000 people RSVP for the thing. It was crazy. And we did a private awards ceremony beforehand for drivers, and we gave out golden mustaches to like the all-stars of the last year. It was kind of like the Oscars for Lyft drivers.
I think that's a kind of a transferable model, the whole kind of making your stars, your star users famous, and, you know, recognizing them and tagging them, and it's kind of a nice transferable model that works. So I think you guys are doing it really well. Other questions we had? Yes.
Hi. How do you measure your company's success? Because it looks like you're doing a lot of customer engagement.
Yeah, so on social media, it's a little easier to measure success than on some other channels. So social media, we do a lot of analytics. We look and see, you know, what's most effective, try to optimize our participation there, and, you know, run metrics using like leading analytics platforms like Simply Measured and Topsy to see how we're doing there and which types of content that we share are the most powerful and how responsive we're being. One thing I didn't talk about a lot is how much we prioritize responsiveness in social media. But if you tweeted us and say something nice about us, you should hear something back. And if you tweeted us and have a problem, you should definitely hear something back even faster. And, you know, we want there to be that back and forth, that level of recognition, because the values I described of having a personal, accessible, friendly relationship should extend not just, you know, from between the driver and passenger in the car, but also to the relationship that you have with us as a company. If you ever try to reach out to us, we should be there. And so we, you know, we measure our responsiveness to see how we're doing against that goal, and, you know, response time and the percent of tweets that we respond to in any given week, and those kinds of metrics. And then with email, you know, you can look at open rates and click-through rates, but with our driver newsletters, click-through is pretty irrelevant. That's not what we're trying to do with a driver newsletter. We're trying to make people feel a certain way and inspire them to certain behaviors, and that's a little bit harder to measure. I wish I could, you know, correlate open rates on email with like driver ratings, and okay, actually maybe I could do that, and that's kind of a cool idea. So good idea that you inspired there. And then our Facebook groups are frustrating because there's no such thing as insights for Facebook groups. I wish they had that, but maybe they'll make it more of an enterprise product. We do, and we certainly look at, we look at the metrics for that on our same, you know, social media analytics, and, you know, and review those. But I would love to have them for our groups as well, because they're extremely active and it's difficult to gauge the volume.
So I love the words you use, like pour gasoline on them and teach them to sing. I think when you talk about the emotional content, you really nail it. So, but you spent most of your time talking about the driver side of the community, and I'm wondering about the customer side. Like, is there enough in common for them for that to be fruitful, or?
So I think you definitely identified the focus correctly, and I think that there are a couple of reasons for what that focus has been more heavily on the drivers. And one of those is one that might continue, and one of those will hopefully end, which is just in being a very small company for our first year, we're very resource constrained and we're growing really fast, and so we saw that we were always limited on the supply side. Like the demand was growing so fast, like so many people wanted to take Lyfts, there were requests pouring in, but then we could never get enough drivers to keep up with that trajectory. So we did prioritize our focus on the driver community to really keep them happy and help make that an extremely attractive experience, because it's harder to acquire driver supply. It's more difficult to convert a driver than a new passenger. And so yeah, I think that's true, but I think that has left a gap that I would love to fill as we build out this community team with community managers. Maybe one of you is in the room. And I would like to do more for like power lifters and Lyft evangelists. We've done things to provide sort of invitations to special events for people who've been our most active users, or give them like special hand-delivered gifts for people that were the most active. But that's not very systematic. It's very manual and not very scalable. And so we have a lot of ideas about how we might be able to build that out on the passenger side. Now we do newsletters on the passenger side as well, and do a lot of sort of public channels, social media engagement with passengers. But there's a lot more that needs to be done there that I think, without the limitations of resource constraint that we had in the first year, could be built much more robustly.
It actually reminds me of the beginnings of Yelp, and just the way that they stratify their whole like Yelp Elite and the other users, and the way that they Yelp's a different animal now, but at the beginning he came and spoke here, and Nish, who was the community manager at the very beginning, and similar I remember it was a similar kind of philosophy. There was a question over here. Hi, Heidi.
I was wondering, how did you manage to recruit drivers in the very beginning? To kind of be off the grid taxi drivers, is a certain amount of risk involved, and is it a different strategy for each city?
Yeah, I think there are different strategies for different cities, depending on what the focus of that city is, and that in a place like LA, we've seen that there's a huge creative community, right? There's a whole bunch of like really friendly, welcoming people with cars who are aspiring actors who are underemployed, and they make great Lyft drivers. So we definitely focused on some of those kinds of groups early on, and and continue to every time we launch a new city, to sort of think about what those niches are in that place of people who might be particularly inclined to fit Lyft driving into their lives. And I think it's an interesting opportunity actually to talk about like the varied use case of driving, because it runs the gamut from people who do it from a very significant source of income and have left behind typical jobs, to people who have creative careers. That is really a very common situation. People who are artists and DJs and performers of various kinds, or freelancers, and have sporadic work where they need to like fill in the gaps, or maybe have some ability to ratchet up their participation when they they need a little more money, and stop doing it for a while when they have a big project going on or are traveling. It works well for them. But there are also people that have like 9-to-5 jobs, that are kindergarten teachers or retired moms who just want to get out and meet new people or have a little pocket money. Good call.
So I see ads all the time for Lyft drivers, advertising hourly rates and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, how do you try to limit the influence of money on the driver?
Mm-hmm.
Because that could potentially sour them and make it just about the money. How do you still keep that badger?
That's a really good question, because okay, so he wants to know how it is that we sort of keep the focus on the community rather than just the money, when obviously there's like a significant material incentive for people to start driving. That may be like one of the main reasons. And in our advertising for people to be drivers, we'll often mention like the average rates that we see drivers earning per hour, because that's like really tangible for them to think about, like, okay, this is how much it could contribute to my car costs this year, or this month. And and that, you know, okay, that's really like meaningful, I should give that a shot. So that's always a tension that we see, and I think that's why the things I described about the way we structure our communications with drivers and, you know, the messaging that we use is so important, because if we didn't do that, I think that the sort of gravity might shift in that direction. It's important to inspire people with those values. And sometimes we do see, you know, drivers saying, well, why can't I see exactly how much a particular passenger donated to me? And that's a hard question for me to answer sometimes, because I understand the desire for transparency. And, you know, I don't want to hide anything from them, but I also don't want that to be the dominant thought in their mind when they're having an interaction with a passenger, or after they've had that interaction with a passenger, and then the next time that passenger gets in the car. So we choose to try to create some buffer there that that favors the focus on social interaction rather than money. We do, you know, obviously give drivers like reports on their earnings, and they can see that, and it is meaningful for them. But by incentivizing behavior rather than incentivizing, you know, the monetary benefit that they derive from the platform, and by giving them recognition for that and celebrating that, it really shifts the focus in the direction of community. No. Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm. 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 So the question is, are drivers employed, and then are there legal concerns with the focus on, you know, sort of saying how much they earn? It certainly is income. Yeah, drivers are independent contractors legally. That's the category that's most comparable. So they receive 1099s if it's over a certain amount. They need to report that income. These are not charitable donations, so that's very clear. I can't speak to their like legal reporting. Okay. I would think so. Yeah. We believe it's income. Any other questions? So the question is to talk about the transition from the company that preceded Lyft. Our founder started 6 years ago, called Zimride, which was an online rideshare matching platform for long-distance road trips, basically, that you would plan in advance. A little bit more like Airbnb, where you're thinking about a trip, and then you post that you're going to take this trip, and then you can book rides in other people's cars that are maybe driving to LA and pay them for that through the platform. How did we transition that community into the Lyft community? And so I love your OG question. Thank you. Zimride, I came to know Lyft as a Zimride user before I worked there, and I loved that. It really was the seed of our concept for bringing people together to share rides and to you know, to make social connections through it. Because when you're on like a 6-hour car ride together, like you're gonna get past the superficial BS, and you're gonna start talking about your childhood and your daddy issues, and you know, it's like it pretty quickly gets deep. And you know, I can speak to that myself from some Zim rides that I had, and so we wanted to kind of make that experience possible in short form with Lyft, but we wanted people to get around their cities that way. And what's really exciting as like the big vision is, you know, commuting and like just taking advantage of the fact that people are already driving places that they would be going anyway, and helping match those people up with people who need rides to those same places. But it's really, really hard to do that like right off the bat. There's no liquidity in the marketplace when you start out with, you know, a real-time service, and you need someone to be within 5 minutes of you, you know, and at any time of day that you want to request a ride, going to the same place you are. There's just a very low likelihood of that when there are a low number of participants in the system. But I think that, you know, that was what we started with as a vision for Zimride, and we can eventually get there with Lyft when we have a big enough community. But the Zimride community, just to finish answering your question, There's hundreds of thousands of people across the country, mostly college and university students, because we had this software provided as a service on a contract basis to colleges and universities who provided it to their internal communities. And it actually, you know, it still exists. We recently sold those, basically the Zimride assets and that software platform to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, who continues to operate it, and we would love to see Zimride continue and prosper. At the beginning, when we were launching Lyft, we knew that that was a natural population of people who would probably be open to something like Lyft, so we definitely let them know, you know, through email and other community channels that we had with Zimride about the fact that we were launching Lyft. And we saw many of our early drivers coming from, you know, from the Zimride community and some of our power passengers as well. But it is, we were only in, you know, one city, whereas our Zimride community was spread out over the entire country. Now we're in 6 cities with Lyft, but still not quite the same geographic reach and pattern as we had with Zimride. So maybe one day those will geographically coincide. That would be very exciting. Mm-hmm.
Just to build on that question, so is the vision then eventually that I could choose my rider, like let's say that I was a conservative Christian and I didn't want to ride with people that weren't like me or something. I mean, obviously,
Yikes.
I'm the opposite of that, just to be clear. But a very liberal gay Jew, so there you go. Enough about me. But would we be able to self-select our driver, like by personality trait?
Mm-hmm. Part of what I think is awesome about Lyft is meeting people that you know, that aren't like you, and getting a surprise of who comes into your life for that moment, and learning about someone else. So, I mean, I can't say categorically no, but I certainly don't think we would allow selection parameters like the ones that you described, right? Like religion. Mm-hmm. People have since the very beginning requested the ability to request a driver, and some other products allow that ability, and we think that the best thing we can do for our passenger experience is to get you a ride as quickly as possible. And so it would undermine the efficiency of the system if we were to use criteria other than proximity to assign a driver to you. Now, when we have a much larger number of drivers, maybe there'll be like 10 drivers within 2 minutes of you, and we could start to introduce more other criteria, like I want someone that has, you know, a larger vehicle, or I would prefer a woman, or things like that. But I think we want to keep it really simple. I don't want 7 bells and whistles and your like request a ride button. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah, or to have like, maybe if you like give a preference for people with whom you had friends in common, that would be interesting. I think, so one thing I didn't mention actually that I should have mentioned is we require all users to log in with Facebook. And this is you know, something that could be seen as limiting. We had actually, Andreessen Horowitz decided not to be in our round of funding that was prior to the big round that we had recently from them, because they thought that that was too limiting. And then they saw the growth that we had during the spring, and they were like, all right, maybe it's working out. But actually, we think it's really important, because Facebook, you know, to a significant extent now, and I think even more so in the future, is serving as an identity layer that provides accountability for like verifying that you're probably a real person. They're super good as a system, because they have 1 billion people using their system, at determining if you're a fraudulent account or if you're a real person who has a normal pattern of friending people. And we can use that to make sure people are good actors, and then they're not just creating multiple dummy accounts whenever we kick them out as being a bad actor. And we could use it to do fun things, like when you get in the car with someone, showing you, hey, these are the things that you have in common. Like, you don't have to ask your driver, so how long have you been driving for Lyft? We joke that that's like the question that you always ask the first time you get in the car. But instead, you could be like, oh my gosh, you know, like Susan? Holy crap, like I went to college with her, and then that just starts a whole conversation. So doing things like that could be really fun.
So is that going to continue? Because I'm very involved with social media, but one of the social media sites that I'm involved with is Google Plus, and there's a big segment of that. I've given up my Facebook because I don't like what Facebook is about, and I don't like the way it is. You're cutting out a population of people that could be prospective users. So is there any possibility you'll change that?
I think the question is, would we consider allowing other social networks to be used in addition to Facebook, because some people don't like to use Facebook. And that's definitely a request that we receive. Facebook is most powerful for us if everyone uses it. So, no, I mean, like, if all members of our community are required to use it, it has the most value, right? But I understand that concern. But I'm kind of a disciple of that. Like, people should get on board with Facebook, and that. But we'll see how that evolves in the future and whether it proves to be limiting.
I think she hears your point.
Mm-hmm.
She gets your point. Like, it's not about only Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Just opening it up for other.
Yep.
About the moderation aspect of it, so you do have bad actors from time to time, and you do want to kick them out. How do you do that, and how do you keep this like awesome, positive momentum about the happy drivers and the happy fuzzy going while you make sure that the community knows that you have standards and that you are enforcing stuff.
Yeah. Sure. So the question is, how do we moderate the community, and how do we reconcile the fact that we have, this like supportive community culture with the fact that we remove people who violate the community standards? I actually think it's like a fundamental aspect of a community to have standards, right? And that people want to be members of communities that have values and that stick to those values. And so as long as everyone understands what the rules are and what's appropriate, then it feels fair. And as long as there's due process, it feels fair. So in our groups with drivers on Facebook, I have community guidelines that are in there that every driver can see as a participant in that group of what's acceptable and what's grounds for removal. As a driver in the community, though, like to be removed as a driver or to be removed as a passenger, our ratings are a part of that, and that's had to become more automated over time, but it still will trigger, warnings to you and messaging about coaching about how you can improve if you are falling much below your peers. So we compare drivers to each other, and we say, hey, look, here's a message to let you know that you're in the bottom 5% of drivers, and that falls below our community standards. And so here's what's going to happen. You'll have this chance to improve your participation. Here are some tips about how you can do better, and some reasons that you may have been performing poorly based on feedback that we've received. You have a chance to improve. If you don't, we may have to remove you from the community. And then successive messages like that result in removal if people don't improve. They can also be removed on a one-time incident for something that violates community standards.
That's really good. That's really, really good use of community standards, and I'm super impressed with you guys offering tips. I mean, I've done all of those things, but not the here's tips to improve. That's a really. We only have time for like one or two more questions, so I'm going to call Lewis and maybe one after that, but then we have to break up and schmooze and network.
Yes. I'm just following up on the last one.
Mm-hmm.
During the end of your talk, I was looking at the Lyft feed.
Mm-hmm.
And just to press a little, or just to go a little deeper on that, the transparency you have around standards versus
Mm-hmm.
like violations, or the difference between warning, like your ratings are getting lower versus you've done something that we're kicking you out.
Yeah.
Are those crystal clear? Like if someone misses a pickup, say, do they know ahead of time what happens, or are you at the level still where it's like a one-on-one review each time by whoever your community manager or standard person?
For missed requests, that's something that happens, thousands of times every day, given the scale of what's, the activity on our marketplace. So that's certainly like automated. Drivers see reports of their performance and rate certain metrics that we maintain for them that help them track how they're doing. So we track their, if they miss requests, we track if they, they reserve hours to drive and then they don't show up at those times. We also will let them know about their ratings on an ongoing basis so they can see how that's tracking. So there should be, warning for them well before they reach the threshold of receiving coaching emails. But even at that point, it's not a strict cutoff for those kinds of more like, general infractions. Now, if it's like, something happens in the, with like an unsafe driver or behavioral issues, I think common sense should dictate that those things are grounds for removal. Are we integrated with GPS? Absolutely. Yeah, this would be impossible without that. So it's made everything possible. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's occurred to me before. So the question is, if we dismiss the bottom 5% of drivers, then doesn't that mean that even if we had a really, really fabulously awesome community, there would always be a 5% bottom 5%, and we'd be kicking out good people. So I mean, I think we haven't run into that problem yet, and we believe there is enough sort of churn and new people coming into the community that probably we'd rather if there were very, very little variation that we were observing between the the top percent and the bottom 5%, and that we were totally splitting hairs to try to find those people. I think in our statistical monitoring of what those thresholds were in our community, we would see a problem and a need to adjust that approach. But usually there's a very large delta between those people and their peers, and we feel it's appropriate at that. So we haven't run into that problem.
Lively Q&A. You guys can follow up with questions on Twitter using OCTribe, and also just mentioning Emily Castor and Lyft, and she'll answer them. Thank you so much. You're so good at this whole, I mean, you're good at community management, but you're also a really good speaker, and you're also good at translating your specific product into larger community issues, and the whole concept, I think, really worked tonight. So thank you. Round of applause for Emily. Great job. Great job. And you guys talk amongst yourselves, eat and drink, and for the next half hour, hang out here, and thank you, and we will see you. Oh, if you haven't, two more things. I forgot to thank the Creamery / Iron Cactus for the food donation, and if you haven't signed up for the Meetup group, if you just came because someone told you, go to meetup.com/OCTribe and join it. You'll be reminded of the next meetup. The next meetup will be featuring Sahana from Clout, talking about analytics and some other stuff, which we haven't totally worked out the details yet, but she'll be speaking. And it will be the fourth Wednesday of August. I think that's everything. So thank you very much. Oh, take a book. Take a book. Take a book on your way out. Take a